We're at 23 billion Egyptian pounds receivables. We're extremely profitable.
Joining me on the couch is royalty or fintech royalty from the land of the pharaohs. On the couch with me is Mounir Nakhla, who is actually the founder and CEO of MNT-Halan.
So once you have a legal system that works, and once you have an underwriting capability that's good, and once you have a mindset of defining various products for different segments that are very well thought out to control the risk, you usually have low NPLs and high margins.
You know, have you become the catalyst of change in a market like Egypt? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Couchonomics with Arjun. Joining me on the couch is, I guess, royalty or fintech royalty from the land of the pharaohs. So, you know, we're getting all very exotic today. On the couch with me is Mounir Nakhla. I don't know if I got the name right. He's corrected me 3 times before we went on, who is actually the founder and CEO of MNT-Halan. And actually, for those who have not heard about MNT-Halan, which means you've been under a rock, is they have been the poster child of not just the fintech, but I guess the startup movement, which has come out of Egypt, right? With that, Mounir, welcome to the couch.
Thank you, Arjun. And it's great to be here, and thank you for hosting me.
No, it's a pleasure. I think, if I'm not wrong, we got in touch last season. We couldn't get the dates to work, but, you know, it doesn't matter if it's last year or this year. I finally have you on the seat.
Things always happen at the right time.
Exactly right. I have an analogy which I don't want to use today, but it has to do with an adult beverage which says good things comes to those who wait. Okay. But with that, Mounir, I guess for everybody's sake, including mine, right? Very interested to hear around the journey from the inception, right, to where you guys are today, but in your words.
So the journey starts before the inception. The journey starts when I was at university doing my undergrad dissertation. And at that time, I didn't know what to do it on. And I decided to do it on the impact of microfinance in Egypt. My uncle was very, very present in that space, in the space of sustainable development, how that's what it was. And microfinance was a big thing. And when I did the surveys back then, I realized that there is huge impact on providing financial services to the underbanked. And fast forward to 2010, I got the opportunity to sell 3-wheelers on credit, very, very similar to Bajaj Finance. And surprisingly, it was also Bajaj 3-wheelers. And that was a very, very exciting business. Soon after, we got a microfinance license. Then we got into technology. After a trip I did to meet Gojek in Indonesia. All right. They were $1 billion company at the time. We were a fraction of that. And I looked for a partner, and I met Ahmed Mohsen. And he's my co-founder in Halan. And that was the beginning of the digital journey of unlocking financial services to the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay. So 2 questions spring straight to mind. We talk about the underserved, we talk about the underbanked, right? Which sit in a number of cohorts, right? There are consumers, the individuals who are there, and more importantly, I personally think you've got the micro and small businesses, which have, according to me, a whammy impact, because not only are the businesses underserved, but actually then the employees within these businesses also sometimes get underserved for a number of reasons. 2 questions for you, right? Everybody sees an opportunity, but for years nobody does anything about it. Right? Why? And why is that the case in Egypt? What made you believe you could do it differently?
People are made very differently. And some people have a strong instinct and they take action based on their instinct. And I'm one of those people who takes action. Sometimes I'm right, often I'm wrong, but I like taking action.
Okay. And that was it?
For me, when I started in 2010 selling 3-wheelers on credit, for me it felt like dumb proof, right? There was a trading margin, a hefty trading margin, fantastic lending margin, fantastic NIMs, And it was a secure product because it was revenue generating. So tuk-tuks were used like taxis, so revenue generating. The return on investment for the tuk-tuk driver was 10 months. So for me, it was impossible that I don't make a move on that. Okay. And so on and so forth, one opportunity after the other, I get these very, very strong feelings to react, and I do.
Okay, so let me understand that today. We chatted a little bit before the start of the discussion, and you said, your goal is to become a financial super app. You obviously are. The concept of a super app means you serve multiple needs of multiple segments through multiple products and services, right? Right. How do you make it all hang together? Right? Because you have a consumer like me wanting a BNPL product.
With a thread. With a thread. That's how we keep it hanging all together. So basically, it hasn't been easy. And there was a learning curve putting it all together. And we really, really started doing a ride-hailing business and a delivery business that we launched in 2018 and we aborted in 2020 or the beginnings of 2021 once we established. And during that period, we really shifted from super app to financial super app. We developed our core banking software, Neuron, that was designed to be able to customize different financial services on it. And we had an e-commerce platform. And once we started selling on credit, the e-commerce platform, we saw a huge uptick. And that was a further confirmation that access to credit is an important vertical in putting it all together. After the next step was to get into payments. And we got a license from the Central Bank of Egypt to do a mobile wallet that currently has maybe $100 million monthly throughput on it. And we later got approval for a card as well that's very, very recently, and that it's just been launched. And the next step was to provide other financial services, whether investment, saving, buying gold, money market funds. And once you provide the customer with access to finance, investment, payment, then I think you have the basic triangle. Add to this a game that is really to acquire customers, an e-commerce platform that's targeted with specific products for this segment. So it's not going to be, this is not going to be the game changer. And that's why the focus is financial super app.
Okay, so let's deconstruct this for a little bit, right? So you mentioned a number of very interesting things. So there's a customer, right? And we understand that there's an abundance of that customer in a country like Egypt, which is, it's developing quite quickly. It's young. It's financially excluded from the traditional world, right? And obviously, it's your understanding of the customer. You talked about technology, right? And the fact that you've built a proprietary technology which has various component parts to it. I'm sure it connects with the wider ecosystem of what exists in technology. You've talked about a wide range of products, right? So there is some obviously some inherent capability in terms of being able to develop products and evolve those, right? Obviously, in all of this, there's distributive capacity you talked about. There's the e-commerce platform, possibly other avenues to the market. If I actually put all of this together, where is it that you guys are excelling? Where are you guys hitting the ball out of the park in terms of what's the key differentiator? And I'm sorry, I'm not asking you to share your trade secrets here, but which part of this equation have you guys got so right that allows you to continue growing at the rate that you are?
Access to finance, whether for consumers or for small businesses or for medium businesses.
And when you say access to finance means you can give finance or that is. Yeah. And how are you being able to actually raise that kind of capital? Because I'm sure you're raising that from secondary markets, right? So are banks coming on board with you and saying, hey, we can't do this ourselves, so why don't we just partner you and give you a line of credit? Or are you being more creative about it?
The Fibonacci sequence.
Well, I've read about it in,
Yeah.
what was that book from?
So we're growing at the same rate.
Right.
So 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13.
Yep.
21, we beat that. So we're at 23 billion Egyptian pounds receivables, loan book receivables. And the way we financed that was basically leveraging banks. Initially, we used to take overdraft facilities. Then we moved on to securitizations and offloading our loan book. So that makes us more balance sheet light. And we're actually exploring 2 other avenues to raise funding. But we are becoming one of the largest, we are the largest non-bank financial service provider in Egypt. And even when you rank us among Egyptian banks, we rank very, very high up.
And so is the goal just to become a bank now?
No. It's become a neobank that's consumer-centric, that provides, that keeps the customer happy, that keeps the customer engaged, that retains the customer, that puts the customer at the center of their being, and to provide one service after the other with the customer in mind. Banks are intimidating by definition. So a lot of people don't feel comfortable walking into a village, walking into a bank. There's a security guard in the beginning. Then you take a number. Then there are people in suits. They look different. And this whole experience can throw a lot of people off. So we want to be closer and closer to the people and provide a multitude of financial services.
So Mounir, I get it, but I have to put a challenge. So I was at Singapore Fintech Festival last year, right? I don't know if you were there, but I go there quite regularly. You should also go if you get a chance. As a matter of fact, I'm going to introduce you to the guys out there. You should be speaking at something called the Founders Peak because you have such a successful business. So I hosted a roundtable, right? And it had 14 CEOs from digital and neobanks, right? And the conversation was, why are digital banks or neobanks not making money, right? Customers like them. They sort of suggest they have large customer bases. They're able to lend. Obviously, they're slightly more expensive in terms of the lend because of the dynamics of being able to borrow, right? So on and so forth. They don't have bank branches. Some of them have a quasi-digital model, but most of them are digital. But they all, across the board, were struggling to make money. What's so unique about the Egyptian market which convinces you that a neobank can be profitable, not grow, profitable in Egypt?
We're extremely profitable. So payments has very slim margins.
Agreed.
E-commerce is a loss-making business.
Yep.
Having a game or having additional things on the app is for customer acquisition, retention, engagement. Lending makes money.
Yes. But lending makes money if you're able to actually lend to the right segment and keep your NPLs low. What do you guys do differently? Because typically in emerging markets, the biggest challenge, because see, my question goes back is, if you could have mastered this, Egypt is not, Egypt has enough banks, right? I'm not suggesting there couldn't be place for more. Why haven't any of the banks woken up to this reality and said, we can create a double-digit business serving the underserved?
Distribution.
So they just can't reach distributive capacity?
It's distribution. They can't reach the customers. What we've done right is we started with a very, very low-risk appetite. Lending businesses, lending people who have an asset, lending someone who we are certain can pay. And because the household debt to GDP in Egypt is 8%. So it gives you an indication how under-levered the household is. If you look at Brazil, it's 37%. If you look at developed economies, it's 70%, and some exceed 100%. So when you have 8%, is people are under-levered. There's no access. So from a lending point of view, you have the luxury of selecting the best. And as we grew, we increased our risk appetite and starting addressing more consumer needs, buying needs. So we got into consumption smoothing, and with automatic algorithms, with instant approvals, but we always get ink on paper for guarantees, and the legal system eventually does work in Egypt, which gives us great comfort. In some other countries, the legal system is even more advanced because it's 100% digital. You can KYC the customer digitally, you can onboard him digitally. But in
India is a great example. I was there this week, right? It's an incredible example of how they've got KYC sorted. But sorry, I interrupt.
So once you have a legal system that works, and once you have an underwriting capability that's good, and once you have a mindset of defining various products for different segments that are very well thought out to control the risk, you usually have low NPLs and high margins.
Okay, interesting. A couple of questions come to my mind. As a matter of, I don't know, 10 questions come to my mind, but I'll just start with a couple. So you are obviously, you're focusing on retail loans, right, which is to consumers. You also do micro and small business loans, right? Are you seeing two divergent businesses emerge eventually, or are you able to sort of keep these together because you feel that there are enough synergies between the two and they can be sort of coexistent?
The micro loans and the consumer loans can coexist.
Agreed.
Because the micro loan is a business owner that takes the money,
right?
And money is fungible. But obviously, if we try and make sure that it goes into the business, but it's fungible. Business loans are different, but with businesses, when we address businesses, it's really a B2B2C sale.
Okay.
So what we're really going after, it's good for our balance sheet. So it grows our balance sheet, it grows our loan book, it's good for profitability.
Yep.
But it's not that where it adds tremendous value to the digital onboarding is with the employees. So deduction at source.
So it's earned wage access.
Earned wage access, or even salary advance.
Salary advances, yeah.
Or consumer financing. So we're going really for the employees in the business in addition to the business. We've signed up, I think, companies that have more than 200,000 employees now.
Well, that's excellent. You know, that is actually very good to hear, because one of the biggest challenges I've seen with earned wage access businesses, and I actually have the good fortune that I sit on the cap table of one of them. Well, it's a good fortune that I sit on it, but the challenge they feel is that a lot of the employers in a number of markets across this part of the world are just not wanting to do that. They're not wanting to extend that benefit to their employees. Obviously, in Egypt, it seems different.
No, I think in Egypt, a lot of the employers want to extend this benefit to their employees.
That's what I'm saying. Egypt is different. So Egypt, actually, employers want to do it.
So the opposite is what? The employee goes to the employer and tells him, I need please lend me a bit of money for a month or 2 months, deducted from my salary. And a lot of the employers don't want to do that.
They don't want to do that.
They want to offload this to a third party.
They do. And they offload, but actually most of the employers, unfortunately, don't want to even offload it to a third party. They just don't want to have anything to do with it. Right?
It's an additional HR hassle.
It is.
Basically, the employer, what he needs to do is to deduct from the salary. And there's a bit of work to do with the HR department. But once this is sorted, I think it's a good benefit an employer can give to the employees.
No, and we have a common friend who runs Eden Red in the region, and you know they're doing very well in this segment.
They are,
specifically in the UAE, and they're working with an earned wage access player on this. Let's pivot to the other side, right? So obviously the incumbents, the banks, have seen the success of players like you in the market. How are they behaving now differently? Is this bringing about a shift? You know, have you become the catalyst of change in a market like Egypt? Because as you said, 8% under-levered family household. Obviously, you're not going to cover the entire nation. Right, you got to bring the whole. Well, I know you'd love to, but let's bring a few other parties to it. Are you seeing banks look at you guys and say, you know something, we should get into the story ourselves, either directly or indirectly? How are the incumbents responding?
I think it really boils down to what is the ultimate motivation of the people running the banks? And once you have an answer to this question.
Well, one part of the answer I can't say in this room because the show will come to an end, but I'll wait for yours. Go ahead.
So once you have an answer to this question, it gives you a bit of a mindset of what they're doing and why they're doing it. What I've seen from banks is that now more and more they trust us. I think we're working with more than 90% of Egyptian banks.
Excellent.
And they view us as a distribution channel for their deposits. We're not deposit taking. They are deposit taking. And we're a distribution channel for them. So I think it's a fantastic partnership.
Yeah, so the symbiosis, the cooperation is great.
There's fantastic. They can even sometimes charge us a little bit more, make a little bit more margins. They buy our securitization, so on and so forth. What I have seen, however, is some of the banks, the international banks or regional banks that have offices in Egypt and have branches in Egypt want to enter into this segment. And some of those banks have discussed establishing companies that would get a license from the Financial Regulatory Authority instead of the Central Bank of Egypt to do similar work we're doing. And I thought that's very surprising. So why are you thinking of doing a company owned by a bank? You're a bank. You've got the... But this also raises a few question marks that I still don't have answers
for, and that's great. That's evolving. Let's switch gear, Mounir, a little bit, right? You and your co-founders, and actually a cohort of you, were sort of the pioneers in terms of the startup, the fintech, evolution that Egypt has seen. Paint a picture for me, right? Or paint a picture for actually the audience in terms of what do you see going really well with regards to the fintech ecosystem in Egypt? Where do you believe that there are certain gaps where, other stakeholders, whether it's the regulators, the banks, the investors could do differently, right? Where do you see this heading? I just want a statesman's view on this.
Before I give a statesman's view on this, I think I'm going to tell you how I've witnessed the journey of the ecosystem evolve.
Perfect.
So when I raised money, my first amount of money in 2010, there wasn't I'm valuing my company at X, give me a check of Y and you take 5% or 10% or 2%. It wasn't done that way. And probably at that point, I lost a big portion of the equity very, very early on in the journey as I founded the company. Fast forward 2018, you get offered $100,000 for 5% of the company and you only have a deck. Just a deck. That's all you've got. And I've seen from 2017, maybe late 16, 2017, all the way up to February 2022. And that period, I saw a lot of startups pop up and a lot of young, intelligent people doing great things with fantastic unit economics. And it was a very, very exciting time in Egypt, and money was pouring into the country. And it was pouring with local VCs, regional VCs, international VCs. And I have to admit that some of this money, some of this hot money, changed the mindset of the founders, and they moved them very much away from unit economics and into a growth mindset at all costs. When the music stopped, a lot of the great businesses I saw and wanted to invest in during that period, they got their fingers burnt. They had to shut down. With the exception of a few that are still a big success in Egypt. So the reason I'm saying this story is sometimes it is the investor that has a stronger influence on the founder and directs the company whether
it's right or wrong for the company.
Right or wrong.
And unfortunately, we saw this everywhere. Right, we saw this everywhere. I saw this play out in the UK. We've seen so much about it in the US. I was, as I said earlier, I was in India this week. I met at least a dozen founders where, companies have gone from valuations where they have had to take 99% corrections on valuations, which is unbelievable in the sense, right? It's just incomprehensible. And while I think a number of these founders were on the Kool-Aid, right, themselves, you're completely right that I think the investors had a role to play, because it was about raising the next round, and the next fund, the next fund, the next fund. And so therefore valuations were being played out. How do you see this moving forward now?
No, I think now...
Not just the investment side. I'm talking about just the overall
the ecosystem in Egypt?
Yeah.
No, there's an interesting ecosystem. There are lots of exciting startups coming about. Some more focused on unit economics, many growing and acquiring customers. But those who are focused more on unit economics will survive longer. From a regulator point of view, I think the regulators are supportive.
Okay.
So there are still a lot of things that should be done, like digital KYC, digital onboarding, even linking the courts to the digital sphere. And when someone... So all this still needs to happen, but we've come a very, very long way.
So let me ask a question. I'm sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot. You can choose not to answer it. There's a difference between a supportive regulator and a progressive regulator, right? Where is Egypt on that spectrum? And beyond KYC and connecting the judicial courts, what else is missing from a regulatory point of view? Because I'll take a step back, right? My view, and I think is now quite shared, is regulators have come a long way in their own, if I may say, positioning, right? If we go back to the time when I guess you and I were in schools and colleges, and I'm sure you're younger than I am, the view of the regulator was, monetary policy, fiscal policy, consumer protection. Now they're market makers, right? They have infrastructure capabilities, right? They are policy drivers. They have sandboxes, right? Where do you feel, and I see it from your perspective, saying how can the ecosystem benefit a little bit more from the regulator? What would the Egyptian regulator need to do differently?
So I would say that the Egyptian regulators have a very, very progressive mindset. It just takes them a little bit longer than other regulators to get the things done, but they eventually get them done. But there is a progressive mindset.
Okay.
So we have a sandbox.
I know.
We have a company in the sandbox. We're very excited to launch it in a couple of months that does a rotating saving and credit scheme.
Okay.
Which is really will hit a large population. So no, we're excited.
Okay, so taking that whole dimension, taking it a bit more, I guess, regional. A number of Egyptian startups have done well coming across borders, right? And I see quite a few of them establish themselves now in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, right? Actually, I had some of your, if I may say, peers on the show last season, right? I think you guys do well when you guys come across borders. Where is this thinking? Because see, the way I see it is Egypt is 100 million plus people, under-levered in certain categories. It's got a growing micro small business scene. I don't know what % of the GDP comes out of it, but I'm sure it's significant. So there's enough opportunity in Egypt itself, right? But I guess a number of them are saying, no, hey, we want to land up in Saudi Arabia. Some are actually looking at other parts of Africa because Africa itself is huge. What's your view on that, right? Do you see a lot many more Egyptian companies go cross-border in the coming years, right? And I mean in the next 2 to 3 years, or do you think there's a lot of focus going to be very much indigenous and say, let's focus on Egypt and let's make that a success? And you can wrap your own story into it. Where do you guys sit on that?
I think more and more companies will be that are successful in Egypt will move outside of Egypt to complement the Egyptian business.
Okay.
Going outside of Egypt, for example, for us, we're really, I think we view Egypt as our testing lab where we've tried many products, many services, different consumer segments. Once we go out of Egypt, we can't go out with the whole suite of services. So we'll have to be more focused and ensure that there is a right product market fit with the market we're going after. We're also looking at large populations, close proximity, synergies with Egypt. So it complements a story together.
And do you see that as a North African story, or do you see that as a more, is it a North African sub-Saharan story, or is it more, I guess, if I may call it, the Arab Middle East GCC story? Where do you think this is going to go more? I think a lot of people have come to, with all due respect, my view is a lot of people are coming into the kingdom because they feel that, hey, it gives them a better valuation, there's more access to capital, so let's establish something in the kingdom, you get access to money. My view, completely wrong, I could be. Which side of the story do you see prevailing? Because you also don't want to go too many places. Let's be honest, you're young, you're nimble, and the more you expand multi-jurisdiction, the more, if I may say, bureaucracy comes into the system. You've got to be careful, compliance, cybersecurity, which adds a few costs. Where do you see that shift going?
We're seriously exploring more than one country.
Okay.
A few in the region with very, very large populations. A couple in Africa. We're also exploring the GCC, and the kingdom is an important country there. It has 35, 40 million. There are a lot of people who are underbanked, blue collars, spring collars, small business owners. So not really the consumer segment that's really, really hammered by others, but there are other segments that if we do the right product market fit, I think will add tremendous value. And we will add tremendous value to providing services to people who are underserved.
Okay. Let's reverse the story, right? So my experience, and again, I'm not passing a general statement, but I have this bad habit of passing sweeping statements. I have seen 2 or 3 businesses that I've known who have struggled to come into Egypt, right? Who are not necessarily, they're not Egyptian, right? With the exception of a few who are in the infrastructure game and come out of what I call low unit economic environment, right? So besides low unit economics, right, which we all understand, do you think Egypt is a very hard market for international fintechs, startups to come in and prevail? And if so, why?
So I'm conflicted, right? I'm totally incentivized to say, it's super hard, don't come here, stay in your countries, and don't come and mess with us, right? I'm totally... I'm conflicted. How can I answer this?
I personally am not, because I think competition is great. It grows the market.
I think there is a lot of local knowledge in any market you venture into. So I think having the right partners, the right research, if you do enough work ahead of the time, I think you're fine. And then there is the regulatory angle as well. So you need to make sure that regulation is in place, you know what you're doing, and you make sure you do it right. But we've had a lot of international startups come into Egypt and are super successful. Talabat is one of them. That's a big, big success in Egypt. So, and Uber. So you can't just say cross-sectional. No, many startups have been incredibly successful in Egypt.
Macroeconomics, right? Macroeconomics still stay challenging. Movement of money still remains challenging. In that environment, how have you guys figured out, how to operate, how to succeed? What's sort of the secret ingredients of success? And again, you might say, hey, you don't want to share how it works for you, but explain, because it's a very, from the outside, it is a very hard market to operate.
Since I started operating, I established my first company in 2010. 2011, we had a revolution.
Yes, you did.
And I was in the lending business. In 2016, we had a very, very steep devaluation, November 2016. in 2020, we had COVID. And we're also in the lending business. So you can imagine, more recently, there was, what I want to say is about all these incidents, we stood still and grew. We either stood still in US dollar terms or grew. And I think when the weather changes, you need to change what you're wearing. So you wouldn't go out in a t-shirt on a ski resort. And you need to be nimble, you need to be fast, and you need to react quickly. In the last 24 months, there has been headwind. And the headwind was mainly because of devaluation, inflation. And with inflation, the currency loses its value. And from a lender point of view or from a financial services point of view, you need to adjust in dollar terms. And our mindset was a growth mindset. Okay, we need to grow so much in local currency to maintain or grow on a US dollar basis. And we were focused on risk and focused on growth. And that's how we managed to overcome these difficult times. Now, I think the winds are changing. So I think because during that period, there was a hike in interest rate that exceeded 10, 12%.
Exactly.
So, and we often lend with a fixed rate and borrow with a variable rate, so that squeezed our margins. But we were able to adjust quickly because we have small, short loan terms. And now what we're seeing is we think there will be a reversal of this cycle. Exactly what happened from 2018 to 2020 or 2021.
How do you manage your investors? Because it cannot be easy, right? And especially international investors who don't like exposure to too much fluctuation in terms of exchange rate. They obviously run away from the word devaluation. How much of your time just goes managing these guys or girls?
So I've been one of the lucky founders where a lot of my investors have made a lot of money with me, investing with me, and actually exiting and making very good returns on investments. So this track record has, I think, established a two-way confidence that we can navigate any environment, grow, and create more and more value over time. So I think we have a good relationship.
You have a good relationship.
Very, very good relationship.
I'm conscious of time. I know you have a flight to catch. I'm going to end with the last question. I want to hear about, so what's next for you guys? I know you gave us some ideas, new markets. You talked about exploring a number of things. What is next for you guys? Is it stick to the same story, continue to grow? Is there some big diversification? Obviously, you mentioned there are certain products or certain companies that are in the sandbox. If you sum it all up for us, what's next for the company?
The next of the company is really to grow our active users in Egypt from 1 million to 10, 15 million. And that requires a very, very big shift in strategy and in execution and in distribution to put the customer at the core of our strategy, and how to retain him, how to grow him, and how to maintain him. So we are launching multiple products to that end. In addition to that, we are growing regionally and cross borders, as I mentioned, with different products in different markets, and creating a regional story to that end.
Interesting. And how important a role is technology going to play in all of that?
Huge. Huge. It will be it is the main driver.
Okay. And a lot of this is going to be proprietary technology to you?
All our technology is proprietary. So our team, 120 engineers, from the decision we took in August 2019 until we launched Neuron January 21, it's all developed in-house. All. Ahmed is phenomenal. My co-founder, he's phenomenal.
So that diverts a very interesting question. And again, it's not a strategy that you will consider. But so what I saw in I've seen in a couple of international markets is where you build such a good proprietary platform for yourself. You basically say, hey, you know something, we've actually created intrinsic value in that technology company. Why don't we take the technology company to the market too as a standalone, right? My best example, which I love to quote, is Oak North, right? Which I'm sure you're aware of, the bank in Britain, Oak North Technologies, Oak North the bank, and now Oak North Technologies, powers X number of other banks in, I guess, complementary markets. Is that part of the strategy at all? Or you're like, no, we just want to keep the technology for ourselves and continue to grow our own core business?
Software as a service is a different business.
Agree.
We've done it in Egypt with one of our competitors. I had stomach aches at night. I go, why? Why do I give someone my proprietary technology to make a small fee or to grow it? It's a different business. Then we said, okay, we're going to do it cross-border, but not in Egypt. We got a lot of interest.
Yeah.
The bandwidth that it will take us to establish this line of business, I would much rather not establish this line of business and focus on my consumer and get my customer engaged with me and servicing my customer. So this is not a direction that is a priority to us.
And I understand that, and I get that. But then again, it leads on to these questions lead on to another one. Let's talk about, and we'll end this. Let's talk a little bit about access to talent, right? This is a challenge with a number of scaling tech companies are facing, and not just necessarily technology. And the next data scientist and the next AI expert, but even on other sides of the value chain, right? Because as you become more regional, as you become more customer focused, multiple products, how are you tackling? I know Egypt's great. I hire a lot of people from Egypt. I've been hiring for the last 12 years from Egypt, right? And some of the best people I've hired have come from Egypt. But how do you answer? Because there's a lot of people going after that same talent now, right?
So it's tough. I have to admit it's tough. Of course, now with AI coming into play, it's helping enormously the efficiency of coding. And every person is able to do so much more because of the artificial intelligence. So this is a countercurrent to the scarcity of talent.
Mounir, I want to thank you for coming in. I hope I haven't kept you here longer than you need to. I know you have a very quick meeting and then to the airport, but I appreciate you joining me in Dubai. I hope to see you in Cairo. As I mentioned, I have 2 young daughters and they want to go and see the pyramids. So maybe next time we actually sit down on a couch or a coffee shop, we'll be in Cairo. But I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. I very much enjoyed it. Very much enjoyed our chat. Look forward to meeting your daughters and hosting you in Egypt.
Done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So dear everybody, that was Mounir. Mounir is founder and CEO of MNT-Halan. A very interesting, honest story. Started in a particular segment of the world, which was around ride hailing and delivery, decided there were better things that they could do with themselves, got into financial services, or at least they've been in financial services from day one. They obviously have become a financial super app, and they are one of the most recognizable fintechs in the region, not just in Egypt. Interesting to see the dimension. He does make things sound easier than they are, right? I guess that's just his natural disposition. But with that, I'll say goodbye till next week. Thank you.